For people that struggle with weight loss or chronic inflammation, what is something that they can add to their diet that would help? Or is this simply a game of stripping away?
You know, even if we look at something like obesity, it's always important to look at what is the underlying foundation of this outward appearance or this outward manifestation of a thing. And inflammation can get drugged through the mud as this bad thing, and we want to stop all inflammation, but inflammation is critical for all functions of life. Without inflammation, we wouldn't heal from an infection. We wouldn't heal from wounds. We wouldn't heal from a workout, right? It's a critical part of our lives and of our livelihood. However, when we dip into this place of chronic inflammation, acute inflammation is one thing, but it's kind of like a low-grade fever. And one of the things that we know today is that when our fat cells are overly full, they start to send out false distress signal, pulling in immune factors as if you're infected. And so researchers found out how this is connected. And essentially one of the biggest issues with inflammation is, so we've got inflammation in the body from the fat cells distress signal, and they found that this inflammation in the brain was creating more body fat and creating higher levels of metabolic dysfunction. And that metabolic dysfunction and higher levels of body fat was creating more inflammation in the brain. So what do we do to help to bring a resolution here? Because what happens is a vicious circle, obviously. If neuroinflammation is creating more body fat and body fat is creating more neuroinflammation, we're getting trapped in this vicious circle. And most people are stuck in that, and their favorite Instagram account or even their physician isn't telling them we need to address this inflammation specifically in your brain to help to heal your body.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because in my first business, I was making $300 a month. I quit on my business partner, and the thing that saved me was studying the stories of super successful entrepreneurs. So I hope that this story today helps give you the motivation you need, because I still need it too myself. So today, let's learn the superfoods that you need to eat to lose weight and prevent disease. Enjoy.
So researchers at Auburn University found that there's this particular food, and I don't have a dog in the fight. I didn't care this much about the food.
Backed by
and you know, I was just blown away that this actually had this action in the body. And what they found was that oleocanthal rich extra virgin olive oil is able to help to reduce neuroinflammation, specifically helping to heal the blood-brain barrier, which has a tendency to get broken down by our abnormal diet, allowing more of these kind of toxicants into the brain and creating more inflammation.
Do they know the method of action?
No, we know so little still. You know, we know a ton in nutrition right now, but we probably know maybe 1% of all that there is to know right now.
Yep.
It's still so much more for us to discover. And so when folks are reaching out to learn from folks, you got to keep in mind that even your favorite expert knows so little. And we can tend to put all of our eggs in one basket, in a sense, with a certain diet framework, a belief about diet. We might find out later on that olive oil has some opposite effect, but this is what we know right now. And I always like to point people to leaning into tradition. Humans have been utilizing olive oil for thousands upon thousands of years. And it's very simply made, because there's also this movement today, which I'm grateful for, towards addressing our consumption of ultra-processed foods. Right now, the average American's diet is 60% ultra-processed foods right now.
Whoa.
All right?
I'm not surprised at all, but still hearing you say that is startling.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But we have to be clear.
I grew up on ultra-processed
I know you did. Me too.
Brother,
you know?
ultra-processed. So I look at my family, morbidly obese, have been my entire life, but many of them have managed to get into their 70s, and I, at the risk of completely derailing where we were headed, I don't think people of our generation are going to be able to look the same as they looked and live as long as they lived, because my mom didn't get into ultra processed food, let's say, until she was in her 20s. Whereas kids now, in the womb, brother, they're into ultra-processed food. And I think that 20, 30-year span is going to be devastating to people of our generation. Even I am so freaked out by the fact that I know my mom was eating terribly when she was pregnant with me. She smoked also while she was pregnant. That did not help. And then my whole life, I used to eat fried turkey nuggets and French fries, deep fried turkey nuggets and French fries, almost every night. Dang. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Listen, this is getting into the fields of nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics. We have entire fields of science looking at how each and every bite of food that we eat impacts our genetic expression, and also how our unique genetic makeup leans towards certain nutrients, certain foods that work better for us versus somebody else, right? Now you're speaking to this really important thing, which is, what if we're doing this earlier? Because there's so much of the body being made, foundational things like your brain being made out of these compounds,
Yep.
right? And so, but also mentioning, your family is very similar to mine, very similar. This also speaks to something that we look over, which is the resilience of the human body,
It's
right? You just
amazing.
said it. We can be in this state where we're probably experiencing 4 different chronic diseases and carrying an insane amount of excess body fat as well, and still be able to keep trucking along. And the body is always trying to sort things out and to fix things. If you think about something like type 2 diabetes, which here in the United States, somewhere in the ballpark of about 130 million Americans have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes right now. All right, huge portion of our population. Now, if you look at this condition, so we've got dysfunction happening with our blood sugar, essentially. We've got these beta cells in our pancreas that are making insulin, right? And insulin's getting made and released in response to glucose entering our bloodstream from the food that we're eating primarily. Today, we have the ability to shuttle insane amounts of food into our bloodstream at one time that we never evolved with. And so insulin's gonna be hyperactive. And at some point, it's kind of like a spam, an email scenario happening where you keep getting this insulin message over and over and over again until the inbox, the cell is just like, I'm gonna block you, I'm not gonna whitelist this message, and it's going to downregulate its interaction with insulin, right? So now we've got all of this glucose running wild in the bloodstream, which it's not exactly like this, but a good analogy is kind of like little shards of glass, right? Can just tear stuff up. This is why we tend to have, when we're in this state of insulin resistance and diabetes, capillary issues, losing vision, losing limbs and things that are further away from the core, right? So where things are starting to get a little bit more constricted, start to get torn up. All right, so with that said, even though we're in this state, the body is making an adaptation to that abnormal glucose to keep you alive, all right? What insulin resistance and diabetes is, it is the body adapting to less than ideal conditions or circumstances to keep this person alive when exposed to all of this blood sugar that could kill you, all right? So there's this intelligence and grace that the body has to keep operating and trucking us along, because what people tend to do on the surface is like, well, we're still living longer. No. Right now, this generation is the first generation, and anybody can look this up, that's not going to outlive our predecessors.
Yeah.
That process is reversed, but also with our innovation, you would think our lifespan would continue regardless. We're not living longer, we're dying longer. We're just extending the suffering. With this ultra-processed food awareness, which I'm grateful for, we can get into a little bit of teetering back and forth, because something like olive oil is a processed food.
How much can I heat it though?
I'll answer that in 1 second. With olive oil, right, we've got a very simple processing. We take olives, we crush the olives with low temperature, right? That's how it's traditionally done. That is processing, but it's minor processing.
Very
versus
simple.
you taking, a couple of ears of corn and turning it into Lucky Charms, right? Like there's no connection whatsoever to this thing, and it's so riddled with artificial colors and flavors and the like. How high can you heat olive oil? To answer that question, fantastic question. Traditionally, we're not really cooking with it as much, by the way. Salad dressings, putting it on bread, right? These are some of the ways that would be used traditionally. If we are cooking with it, we've got to be mindful. The reason it's in dark glass is that it's heat and light sensitive, all right? It doesn't change just because you pour it into a pan. So just keep that in mind. The common moniker
What's
is...
What's happening to it when it's getting heated up though? Is it turning
oxidation.
rancid? Okay.
Oh, and also, yeah, it can become rancid as well by not being packaged correctly. But olive oil is kind of, if you think about wines, it could stay like, there was some research that came out not too long ago that they were finding old bottles of olive oil, like, 100 years old or whatever, and cracking into it. And
it was fine?
I wouldn't say it was fine personally, but it was edible and they didn't die.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Rule number 2 is being mindful of what you eat with Dr. Stephen Gundry.
What are the main plants that we should never be eating then?
Okay, real quick. Up until 10,000 years ago, we lived primarily on the leaves of trees, and we ate tubers that grew in the ground, like a sweet potato for a yam.
Love those.
Yeah, they're actually
so good.
they're pretty darn good for you. You were actually designed to eat them. And
Good.
12,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, we switched over to things that we had never eaten before. And those were the grains of grasses and beans. Now, the reason we'd never eaten them before is, number one, we didn't need to. There's never been a documentation of an ape eating grass or grains. Beans are so lethal that 5 raw kidney beans will kill a human being in 5 minutes by coagulating their blood.
What?
5 raw kidney beans.
Raw kidney beans.
In fact, most people have heard of the poison ricin, the white powder you send to your elected official.
Yeah.
Lots on the way to Washington,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
another subject. So ricin is the lectin of the castor bean, and we'll talk about lectins next. A lectin is the plant defense system. These are proteins that are designed to basically kill us in one way or another.
Oh my gosh.
And so ricin is so powerful that about 4 molecules of ricin will kill a human being instantaneously. There's a great study that was written up in one of the journals about a few years ago. They decided to have a healthy eating day in Boston.
Yeah.
And they served the kids beans. And because it's so healthy.
Right.
Part of the blue zone.
Yes.
And they had 30 or 40 admissions to the hospital
No way.
with severe diarrhea, hypotension, and it turns out that it was all the fact that the beans were undercooked. And beans are a plant baby, and we're not supposed to eat those. And so,
No beans.
no beans.
0 beans.
Unless you use
Pinto
a pressure,
black beans.
pinto black.
None of it. We shouldn't be eating it.
Shouldn't be. You weren't designed to eat it. You have no defense
no
system
matter how it's
against
cooked,
it. If you pressure
boiled.
cook it, it's fine.
Pressure cook it. What does
Yeah.
that even mean?
Put it in a pressure cooker.
Pressure
the
cooker.
modern pressure cooker is as easy as a rice cooker.
Got it.
It's one touch. It's not your grandmother's pressure
Got it.
cooker that blew up in the kitchen. And
So then it's okay to eat.
yeah, so you can pressure cook beans. Now the other thing, we weren't designed to eat grains.
Now,
And
just a quick question before you start there. How much of it can we eat? Does it matter once it's pressure cooked?
Here-
Obviously, everything in moderation, but I mean,
yeah, well, like I was
it's
presenting.
like 20 beans are going to kill me or what?
no,
what's
if you pressure cook them, they're fine.
It's all good. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And we talk about how to do this in the plant
Got it.
paradox.
Got it. Okay, cool.
But my personal feeling is the only purpose of eating a bean is to get olive oil into my mouth, and we can talk about that
Got it.
as we go along.
Okay.
So grains, for instance, everybody heard about gluten.
Yes.
All right. So gluten is a lectin. And again, a lectin is a plant's defense system. It's a protein that actually is designed to act like incoming guided missile attacks
Wow.
on the inside wall of our gut. And these things actually pry open the lining of our gut and actually break through the border.
Really?
Yeah, they really do. And
That's what causes eczema and
Bingo.
causes breakouts.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Acne,
All that
brain fog, irritable bowel. This is actually all part of that process.
Wow.
And so it's fascinating to see people who either have come to see me or have even read the book and then write on Amazon, oh my gosh, I had this horrible eczema and now a month later it's all gone and all I did was, take grains and beans and nightshades away from my diet and everything got better. So that brings us to the second kind of group of things we shouldn't eat. All of us are not from the United States, America. We're actually from Europe, Asia, or Africa. Every one of us.
Yeah.
So, and even our Native Americans are actually not Native Americans. They're from Asia. Get over it.
Right. Right.
So none of us were exposed to an American plant until 500 years ago when Columbus started trade. So getting to know a new plant, a new lectin in 500 years is speed dating. in evolution. I just don't think it can be done. For instance, the Italians refused to eat tomatoes for 200 years after their native son Columbus brought them back because they knew how dangerous they were. They were part of the deadly nightshade family.
Really?
And when they started eating them, they always peeled and de-seeded their tomatoes because the peels and the seeds actually have the vast majority of the lectins. And it's interesting. Years ago, I did my fellowship in children's heart surgery in London, England, and I had a house officer from Italy, and he invited me up for pasta and tomato sauce.
Yes.
And so I brought, it'd be nice if I bought a couple cans of canned tomatoes, help out.
Sure.
And he looks at it, he says, "Why did you bring me this? We can't use this." So I said, "What do you mean? It's canned tomatoes." He says, "It's got peels and seeds. You can't make sauce with peels and seeds." He says, "Mamma mia, what am I going to do with you?" He says, you can't use peels and seeds. And I said, "Why?" He says, "They're deadly." And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah, everybody knows that." And then I thought back. As a child, my grandmother was French, and she taught my mother that you always peel and de-seed tomatoes before you slice them and serve them. So until I went to Yale, I had never had a slice of a tomato with a peel and a seed.
Wow.
And this has come from cultures.
Rule number 3 is pay attention to how you feel with Mark Hyman.
If you were to put together a few groups of the sort of healing signals, what would they be? Like, what would be, if you were in investing, there's this thing called the all-weather strategy. And they say, okay, look, I'm sort of blindly talking to my grandchildren. I'm, going to pass away, and all I can leave behind is a strategy that will work in any environment. But if you had to just put together an all-weather eating strategy, what would the ideal, in air quotes, diet
I wrote about it. I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? And it's about these principles, I call them the Pegan principles. And it's really focused on quality first, right? Nobody thinks we should be adding additives and hormones and antibiotics and pesticides and glyphosate to our food. Like, it's in it, but nobody's like, yeah.
How do we avoid it at the grocery store?
If you look at the label of something, if it has something you can't recognize, pronounce, then you shouldn't have it. Or if you don't have it in your cupboard at home, like butylated hydroxytoluene, which is in almost every processed food, is BHT. It's illegal in Europe. You wouldn't sprinkle that on your salad, would you? No. So that's a good rule. The second principle is, we should be eating a plant-rich diet, and across the spectrum, from fruits and vegetables to...
Do you treat fruits and vegetables as sort of one and the same, or?
No, it should be vegetables and fruit, right? So it's like, you don't want to be consuming only fruit because that's full of sugar, and if you're diabetic or you're overweight or have issues, you might want to cut back on the sugary fruits or eat berries, which are less glycemic. Lots of nuts and seeds. Everybody agrees we should be eating lots of nuts and seeds. You want to soak them, reduce the lectins, that's fine. If you're going to eat beans and grains, pick low starch ones, right? And also...
Give us a few examples.
So like black rice, which is like the blueberries of rice. Quinoa.
What does that mean?
Well, the black rice is called the emperor's rice or forbidden rice. And it's full of these it's black. So anytime you see color in nature, there are polyphenols and phytochemicals in there. So it's got more antioxidants per serving than blueberries. And then you want to make sure, if you're eating, grains, like gluten grains are interesting. So most of the gluten we eat is wheat. It's 133 pounds per person per year. That's a pharmacologic dose. It is worse for your blood sugar than table sugar.
Really?
Yes.
What?
Yes. When you look at the glycemic index, which is how much the fixed amount of the food will raise your blood sugar, table sugar is 80, bread is 100.
Whoa, I had no idea. Why?
Because it's so processed and so quickly absorbed. And if you want to eat, if you're not gluten sensitive, you want to have farro or einkorn wheat or, spelt, you might tolerate those because those aren't highly altered genetically. But the wheat we eat is super starchy, has a lot more gliadin proteins, create more gluten sensitivity, is sprayed with glyphosate at harvest to defoliate the plants, and it also has preservative called calcium propionate, which causes autism in animal models and is shown to cause behavioral problems in kids. So ADD, all that stuff could be all the flour. So I'm not a big flour person, plus it's just like sugar. So if you want to have other grains, if you're not gluten sensitive, like rye or barley, that's fine. And then beans, again, lima beans, kidney beans. Look, 75% of Americans are overweight. So most people should be eating a lot of starch. And that, you have to eat 3 cups of beans to get the equivalent of like 4-6 ounces of protein. So I have this lentils and things like that, which are lower starch beans, the zucchini beans, other kinds of beans. I talk about them in my book. And then if you're eating animal products, you want to eat animal products that are not going to hurt the animals, not going to hurt you, and not going to hurt the environment, right? So for beef, it should be regeneratively raised, ideally, which is hard to find, but you can actually get more and more of that around, and there's ways to do it by looking online to get it. Thrive Market is a great resource for regeneratively raised beef. And again, chicken should be pasture raised, pork and all that should be raised in ways that are more organic or sustainable. Fish, you want to eat fish that's sustainably harvested or sustainably, organically aquacultured, because we over-harvest the fish, and then we don't want to eat big fish. It's like full of mercury and tuna and swordfish.
Just because they've lived longer?
Well, what happens is the coal and all the fossil fuels go in the ocean, go into the algae, get stored in the algae. The little fish eat the algae, then the bigger fish eat the little fish, and it goes on up the food chain. And when you got a swordfish or a tuna, these are monster fish, and they bioaccumulated all this. And so you want to, eat the right animal products. You want to eat the right grains, the right beans, the right vegetables, the right fruits, the right nuts.
Give me the right vegetables. Are we just looking for color spectrum?
So non-starchy vegetables. If you want to cut out nightshades and get rid of the lectins, that's fine. I don't care. But I love tomatoes. I'm not going to do that. And they don't make me feel bad. So there's no point in restricting your diet necessarily if you're not sick, right?
Talk really fast, just because you mentioned that you eat nightshades, which are problematic for a lot of people. I've heard you say that your body is the best doctor. What do you mean by that? Yeah,
exactly. So, man, you listen and watch my stuff. That's I'm impressed. So the whole idea is that you can listen to all the nutritional advice you want, but pay attention to how you feel. Your body's going to tell you. If you go vegan and you stop having your period, you lose muscle, you feel tired, you're B12 deficient, you feel like crap, you develop autoimmune diseases, you gain weight, whatever, maybe it's not for you, right? I literally just did a whole analysis on a very well-known celebrity, and he's a vegan, and he's massively nutritional deficient, no omega-3s, extremely low vitamin D, extremely low B vitamins, extremely low zinc, selenium. It was frightening to see in a young guy how depleted he was. But other people, it works really well for. And then see how you feel. If you get rid of gluten and dairy, do you feel better, right? So I have people do a detox, essentially a dietary cleanse, which is get off all the junk, get off all the sugar, get off all the processed food, eat whole foods, get rid of gluten and dairy, even get rid of grains and beans for a while, and see how you feel. And if you don't feel good, try to add things back. If you feel amazing and your autoimmune disease goes away, your digestive problems clear up, your brain fog's clear, your migraines are gone, well, then that's probably a sign that your body likes that way of eating,
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 4 is cut sugar with Mark Sisson.
When I started researching the Primal Endurance book, I started thinking, well, all of the science continues to show us that the old choice was probably a wrong choice. That reliance on carbohydrates and that intent of managing our glycogen stores in our muscles was kind of the wrong approach. And maybe we ought to come at it from the exact opposite end of the spectrum, which is how do we become really good at burning fat? And in so doing, spare glycogen. And in so doing, unburden ourselves of having to take in so much carbohydrate in the form of pasta and breads and cereals and rice and crackers and cookies and all the other stuff.
Sure. And you're 62, right?
Yeah.
Right? And you're like leaner than anyone I know. So what's the most effective way to burn fat and still be strong?
Yeah, of course. As we said initially in the Primal Blueprint, and I've said it decades before I wrote the Primal Blueprint, 80% of your body composition is determined by how you eat. So there's a certain way in which you can eat where you can literally reprogram your genes to derive most of your energy from your stored body fat.
Really?
Yes. So as opposed to waking up, being hungry, having breakfast, being hungry at the 10:30 break, being hungry for lunch, having a snack in the afternoon, having a dinner, and having a snack before you go to bed, which is this sort of standard American approach. Like even the old bodybuilders would say, don't go more than 3 hours without eating or you will cannibalize your muscle tissue.
Right.
That was all based on an assumption that we had to burn carbohydrate and had to access glucose and glycogen for the muscles to be able to continue to work. It never contemplated that we are obligate fat burners. We are born with this amazing ability to extract calories from stored body fat. And the reason that we don't as we go through life is we present you're 2 years old, you're eating cookies and crackers and mushed peas and
Ice
all sorts
cream
of
and everything, yeah.
all that stuff. And so your body learns to depend on glucose, on carbohydrates as a source of energy, and never really gets to the point where you force it to burn fat. Wow. So what we do is we shift the diet around. It's not painful. You get rid of the breads, the pastas, the cereals, the crackers, the cookies, the candies, the sweetened soft drinks. Well, it does sound kind of nice, doesn't it? But what you're left with is meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, seeds, vegetables, a little bit of fruit, some starchy tubers like sweet potatoes, things like that. Those are great tasting foods if you eat them right, and
they're real food.
And they're real food, and you can use butter and lard, and you can eat bacon on this program. And what it does is it reduces the amount of simple sugars and carbohydrates you take in, and just sort of gently forces your body to upregulate all the enzyme systems that access stored body fat and burn it, and allow you to have more energy throughout the day without having to eat so often. So the first thing that happens is your appetite self-regulates. So now you get into this space where you become a good fat burner. You start to melt away.
You're not as hungry because
you're not as hungry because you're always carrying around a meal.
Yeah.
It's on your thighs, it's on your ass, it's on your belly, wherever it is. It's that's your body becomes so adept at accessing those stored calories. It says, I don't need to eat. I'm really not that hungry.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's so empowering for so many people.
But when I was still love sugar, but I used to be really bad at sugar. I feel like I have much more under control. But I feel like when you're eating a lot of candy, sweets, and sugar, you're never satisfied. You just want to eat more and more and more.
But that's
until you're sick. And
no,
you're
exactly.
Like,
No, yeah,
I'm full because I'm sick now.
Yeah. I mean, stories of Lamar Odom eating 4 pounds of candy
before games
or whatever.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, we're all hardwired.
But look where he's at now. It's like
we're all. But by the way, sugar is a very addictive substance.
It's so addictive.
So we're all hardwired to seek out sweet things. That's part of that hunter-gatherer DNA that we all carry that hasn't changed in thousands of years.
So how do we shift our minds?
So the first way you do it is you go from the craving, which is what you're talking about. Like you crave sugar, so you eat sugar, and then that just promotes more craving, and it gets you into this sort of addictive cycle. You're actually producing sort of opiate-like substances that are occupying receptor sites that are giving you sort of a feel-good experience. So you got to kind of be willing to get rid of that. So you get rid of the candies, you get rid of the sweetened beverages, the soft drinks, the teas, and you get rid of the carbohydrates that not all carbs, but the breads that convert to glucose in the bloodstream so rapidly. So now you've lowered your glucose experience on a daily basis. So now the brain is starting to get, I don't need to really get that much glucose. The body is burning more fat. As a result of you being able to burn fat, you create these byproducts called ketones, which the brain loves to burn ketones and burns them preferentially. So you need less and less sugar to maintain clarity throughout the day. If you haven't become fat adapted and you're a sugar burner, which is what it's not a derogatory term, but we use the term to describe people who haven't become fat burners yet they're sugar burners. If you don't eat, it's true. If you don't eat for a couple of hours, your blood sugar dips because you haven't learned how to burn fat yet. You don't know how to access it. You can't take it out of storage and burn it. So now the blood sugar's low. The brain goes, I got to go get some more glucose. I got to get energy somewhere.
Some sugar or something.
Sugar or something.
Carbs.
So you have the bagel at 10:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Or you have the
tastes amazing.
Well,
for an hour, and then it's
no, exactly. But then you're hungry again, and that's this vicious cycle. So if we can, take the steps. We say it takes 21 days. That's why I have a book called The 21-Day Total Body Transformation. 21 days of this cutting these sugars and starchy not starchy, but simple carbohydrates out of your diet, and just focusing on healthy fats and lean proteins and vegetables,
Right.
your body gets the message and it says, I'm not going to be getting that much glucose. I'm going to learn how to burn fat, and I'm going to do it well. Damn it! And then it takes the fat out of your body fat stores. So over time, you lose 1 pound, 2 pounds a week, and you trend toward your ideal body composition.
Wow.
So all of this is a 10-minute long-winded answer to your question of how, what does it take to burn fat. It doesn't take a lot of exercise. It mostly takes the dietary shift. Right. You got to do some exercise. You don't have to do anything, but you can choose to do some exercise.
It'll help accelerate
and it'll
it,
help
right?
accelerate it a little bit, but most of it happens as a result of the
Really?
shifts you make in your diet. Absolutely.
It's all in the kitchen.
Yep.
Rule number 5 is do intermittent fasting with Dr. Daniel Amen.
How much food should the brain have? Is it, it's our buddy Dave Asprey talks about fasting a lot. A lot of people are in this fasting craze. If we're not giving the brain food or nutrients for a day, 3 days, 5 days, does that help the brain? Does it reset the brain? Does it hurt the brain?
So intermittent fasting, where you go 12 to 16 hours from dinner to breakfast or lunch, is good. They've actually found there's a term called autophagy, where your brain begins to clean up some of the trash.
So it works in the brain too, not just in the
It
fat
works
cells in
on the
body.
brain as well. Now, I grew up Roman Catholic, and long suffering was one of the gifts, and I never got that one. I'm not a fan of long suffering.
Yes.
I'm not doing a marathon. It's like way too much stress for my brain, and I'm not fasting for 3 days, but I can go 12 hours. I mean, like, that's not a big deal, and it helps people lose weight. It helps them be healthy. And I come from a family of fat people. My dad used to hate when I would say that. But I have a brother who's 150 pounds overweight, despite me loving him, nudging him. And you just have to be thoughtful. Know your vulnerability in Bright Minds. The G is genetics. So know what you're genetically vulnerable to. And, I have to work on it.
Rule number 6, eat omega-3 rich foods with William Lee.
All the research, scientific research has been done, and the epidemiological, the public health research shows that eating a plant-based, mostly plant-based diet, that's pretty broad. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, healthy oils, good for you. You should eat mostly that. Doesn't mean, and by the way, plant-based could be tricky because a lot of ultra-processed foods also have plant materials in it. Processed soy, all kinds of other things, all kinds of unhealthy oils made from plants. However, if it's whole plant-based foods, it's kind of stuff you'd find in a grocery store or a farmer's market. Okay, like I would say, mostly go for those. Okay, seafood has been shown to improve survival and decrease the risk of death. If you eat 2 or 3 servings of seafood, it could be fish or shellfish, you get healthy omega-3 fatty acids.
Is that per day?
Per week. 2 to 3 servings per week. And the amount you would eat, which I write a whole chapter about food doses, the amount you would eat is about 3 ounces. So people like, well, wait, I'm not a human scale. I have no idea what 3 ounces is. What I would say, it's a lot less than you think. It is a piece of fish about the size of a deck of playing cards. You can put it in your palm. And it's about as thick as a deck of playing cards. Not that big a deal. And and people who love seafood can get a lot of it that way. Recently, there was an interesting study that showed if you actually increase your level of omega-3s by an extra serving a week or 2, like from wherever you are with your starting point, you can increase your longevity, your survival by 4.7 years. So an extra serving of omega-3 rich seafood, you increase your lifetime survival by 4.7 years. Now you can get, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you can get omega-3s from plant-based foods. So chia seeds, flax seeds, some of the nuts, you can get those as well. But in plant-based foods, you get a different kind of substrate to make your omega-3s. So you got to eat a lot more of it. So, I like diversity.
And rule number 7, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is eat close to the ground with Dr. Jeffrey Bland.
I love the idea of personalization. I think that's really important. That was something that we learned with Lisa as she was going through everything. It was just like, things, they don't bother me, but they'll bother her, and they'll bother her really substantially. And things that make me put on fat don't make her put on fat. And so it's like this really weird thing of, you really do have to personalize it. I heard you say that this is going to be the age where we go from the age of the average to the age of the individual.
Right.
I thought that's really important. You talked about the future of medicine being the ability to look at the intersection of genetics and lifestyle. And then you didn't say AI, but that was certainly what I took away from it, that we're going to use AI effectively to really look at what is the interaction therein, and being able to carry our own medical records with us, decipher all of that. Now, having said all of that, and we're going to go into this time where we're going to be able to do a lot more than we can do now, but what are like the basics that you advise for people? Is it eat the rainbow? Is it don't eat sugar? Is it plants only?
No, not plants only. I think eating close to the ground as much as possible, and the ground.
What does that mean?
It means things that were alive.
Got it.
That didn't get through 7 processes of processing to be shelf stable for millennia. And we're going now into an epic period. As you probably know, there's this recent book about Silicon Valley now taking over the food supply system through this new food technology, doing fermentation technology to produce mimics to animal protein and synthetic milk proteins that come from cloned genes from unicellular organisms. This is a real trend. You know, we see it with Impossible Burgers and these meat substitutes. So the question is, are they the same? And the answer is they may taste the same. They may even look the same. They may cook the same, but they're not the same. I mean, nature is complex, and the more we study foods that were grown in soils or foods that were eaten by animals that were grown in soils, the more we find out that there are things we didn't ever even know about that are part of this orchestration. So my feeling is eat the rainbow, but it's not the synthetic rainbow. it's foods that have their natural colors, because each of those colors is a different phytochemical that has a different principle. Now let me say something quickly about that, because this loops back to your really, I think, insightful question about phytochemicals. We used to think about phytochemicals as being antioxidants. And so it's just like measuring the phytochemical content in your diet was to use an indication that's on some food labels called ORAC, O-R-I-C, which stands for oxygen reducing capacity, oxygen reducing absorbent capacity, O-R-I-C. And so it was said, well, the higher the ORAC value, the better that food is, because it has more antioxidant potential. Well, I'm kind of a early stage antioxidant researcher going back into the 70s, so I think I have some pedigree in this area. And I've been saying for more than 20 years, it's not about antioxidants alone that makes these plant foods valuable. So you just can't substitute one ORAC for another ORAC and get the same thing, because each of those chemicals that are in those individual plants, those phytochemicals, has unique signaling properties. I'm going back to your original concepts, that they send a signal to the genes that's unique to them. So a glucosinolate phytochemical coming from cruciferous vegetables is different than the polyphenols of ellagic acid coming from berries. They both are antioxidants, but they have entirely different physiological mechanisms. And therefore, what are we really trying to accomplish? Are we trying to rejuvenate the immune system through the hormetic effects of multiple signals on goal, so that we have an offense, not just a defense, that's producing a younger immune system? I went on our own program, our immunorejuvenation program, and I consider myself a pretty dedicated, healthy person, exercise, proper sleep, blah, blah, blah. So I went on our program, and I started measuring my epigenetic programming of my immune system. When I started off at the age of 75, I guess, is when I started this, my immune system age based upon epigenetic profiling using AI determination of the methylation patterns of my immune cells was, I was 75 in birthdays, but I was 67 in my immune age. So he said, well, that's pretty good. My immune system is younger than my age and birthdays. But then I really dedicated myself to our program. And I really said, well, could I really have an effect that would be beyond that of what I've seen? And lo and behold, another 3 months in retesting, I was 53.
Whoa.
Yeah, I dropped it another 7 years.
What'd you do?
I went on to our immunorejuvenation program, exactly what you and I are talking about. I religiously dedicated myself to stay on the program, exercise, sleep, stress management, polyphenols, omega-3 fatty acids, prebiotics, probiotics. The whole nature of what we're trying to do in Big Bold Health was
through whole food or supplementation, a mix of both?
Whole food with some supplementation, because I can't, in the way I live my life, always every meal prepare it from the way that I would want it to be prepared. So, you know, we try to provide some convenience in the way that it can be done, but it starts obviously with food.
Sadhguru, you mentioned that you can do 14 different activities at a given moment. So, we all are very curious to know how can we achieve such prowess over both body and mind?
Oh, whoever said this, I didn't say anything like that. Anyway, do you have a liver?
Yes, I do.
Functioning?
Yes.
Do you know how many levels of activity it's doing right now? What the liver is doing is far more complex than what your brains are doing right now. Do you know this? A brainless liver, if it can do so many things, a brained Praneeth, how many things? No, I was only talking about not activity per se. Yes, activity is also possible. So you must understand this. On a round planet which is spinning right now, hello? Are you on a round planet? Spinning? Most people don't understand this unless, you know, they get sozzled out with something or they get some ailment. Suddenly you see, planet is round. Do you know how complex an activity it is for a human being to walk at a certain latitude on a round planet which is spinning and which has magnetic forces working upon you all the time? It's an extremely complex process. You ask a child who is, let's say, 1 year of age, he knows how complex it is. Have you seen? But the moment you learn to walk, you assume that it's nothing, walking is nothing, and you're sick of walking, you want to drive a car, you want to ride a motorcycle. But walking is such a complex process, not 14. 1,000 different functions, your knees and your brains and the fluids in your body, all of them are doing all the time. If only you could conduct these things consciously, you would be doing 1,000 things. Anyway, you're doing it. But if you could conduct this consciously, you would do 1,000 things at a time. So I was only talking about different channels of mind, which you don't have to actually conduct, you just have to initiate and leave. It will go on. For you to think about your neighborhood girl, do you have to initiate action every time? No. Once you look at her, it just goes on by itself. Why? Because you're drawn to it. If you're drawn to 10 different things at the same time, mind is capable of creating 10 different channels and keep it running. A complex mathematical problem, a sensation, a music, some raga, this, that, 100 things at the same time, because that is how complex human mind is. This complexity you can use either to drive yourself crazy with unbridled thought and emotion, or if you harness it, it can do things that nobody has imagined possible. It can do things in a miraculous way. You can manifest things in a phenomenal way if the necessary training goes. If somebody is walking there, if you just look at them, how they're walking, you can make out whether they're physically fit or not. Yes or no? Body has been worked upon, you can see it or no, just by the walk. Similarly, whether the mind has been worked upon or not, whether your energies have been worked upon or not, is something that's visible. Most people may not see, but if you pay attention, you will see. Right now, most human beings, the problem is we gave you a super computer. The most sophisticated machine on this planet is this human mechanism. I am asking you, have you read the user's manual? Hello? No. When are you going to read it? On the last day? When I see this ridiculous stuff, people reading Gita when people are dying. I say, you're reading the user's manual on the last day, what's the point? If you buy a phone, should you read the user's manual in the first 3 days or after 3 years when you want to get rid of the phone? Huh? You must read it in the first 3 days. So I'm not asking you to read a scripture. Well, this is a living scripture. Should you not become competent to read this scripture, understand what is the nature of this, what is the full potential of it and explore this? Because this life is not about this or that. This life is about this. There is no choice about this. It is just that you can enslave this life to something else and think it's about that. But actually it's about this. Are you okay with this? You think right now your life is about education. No, your life is about this. You want this one educated, you want this one to do well, you want this one to experience love, you want this one to experience pleasure, you want this one to do all this. All the other things are only attendant things. This is the real thing, isn't it? So if this is the real thing, does this deserve some amount of attention? Some amount of attention means not standing in front of the mirror and attending to your skin endlessly. Should you not pay attention to every dimension of what this human being is made of? What makes this life tick? And how? If you understand what makes it tick, you can make it roar. If you make it roar, why 14 things? You can do many more.
There's 4 or 5 single actions you could take to actually impact your own health and longevity and show that you've done it.
Who's the stem cell guy?
So his name is Dr. Todd Ovakaitis, and he has invented something that is like so mind-boggling that David Sinclair, who's kind of the leader in the field, I was talking to David, I introduced him to Todd, he went to Todd and he's like, Todd, you're going to win a Nobel Prize for this. So basically, stay with me now because this is a little bit…
All right, we're diving in. This is it.
All right. So stem cells are a really big deal. And they are designed to fix things. That's why they exist. And to also lower inflammation in the body, which is great. And before we're born and up to the time we're born, we have a massive number of stem cells called embryonic stem cells. And they're like the worker bees that are building everything, and they can create and build and fix anything. We lose those the day we're born. But we still have a ton of stem cells in our body. And they can be extracted previously in one of 2 ways, either through body fat, of which you look like you have extremely little, or through bone marrow. Ouch. But he has invented a way to extract it from blood. And not only has he figured out how to extract it from blood, but they are the closest stem cells to the embryonic stem cell. They're the most potent. They can change and into anything, and in theory, fix anything. Whereas the stem cells from from fat or from bone marrow, they're limited in what they can do and what they can fix. So what he does is he extracts blood from you, few tubes, does his magic on them, spins them and whatever else, and then he re-injects it into your body. And here's the magic part. He uses a patented laser to actually direct the stem cells where they're needed the most. So let's say, just for example, that your mom has kidney problems. Her kidneys aren't functioning at 100%. Well, he would aim the lasers at her kidneys so that all those beautiful embryonic-like stem cells would assemble themselves at the kidneys and work to start fixing the kidney, right? If you didn't have that, the stem cells would go wherever they feel like going. Oh, maybe your mom's got an infection in her big toe. Well, they all decide to go to her big toe, right? So you can't direct stem cells unless you have a method of doing it. And he's invented a method of doing that. And so he's moved my age back 3 or 4 years so far. And he's also cured a inherited thing I've got actually on my hand that is incurable. It's not a bad thing. It'll never kill you, but it's a genetic, call it a malformation. And after he applied the laser to my hand, I started seeing these little calluses just start to disappear. And I showed it to my doctor, and he said, "You realize that can't happen. This goes one direction, the wrong direction, and there's nothing that can stop it." And I'm like, "Well, guess what?" So there is some magical things going on out there. I would rather you take, you become the world's expert on, and you're like a complete genius in your area. The question is, are you willing to take the time to become an expert, or at least bring in a team of experts on this for you, for your parents, for your wife, for your kids? It's a really, really, really big deal, but it's all below the water surface now. And if you're not willing, it's like the early days of anything. You got to be willing to learn about it, assemble it yourself, play around with it, know who's in the know. That's the stage we're at right now.
The secret to being healthy is being happy. The secret to being healthy is being happy. The more stressed out you are, the more you feel like you're living out of alignment with your goals and dreams, the more you feel like you're not making any kind of progress in your business or your career, the more you feel like the work you do doesn't matter and your relationships don't matter, that's going to lead you down a path of anxiety, depression, illness, sickness, disease, suicide. It's a really dangerous, slippery slope. But the more you feel happy that today matters, that good things are going to happen to you, guess what? They're more likely to actually happen. People ask me all the time, "Evan, how are you so positive all the time?" Well, I'm not positive all the time. I mean, that's an impossibly high standard, but I try not to be negative that much. And when negative things happen to me, I try not to let them ruin my entire day, let alone my entire week or my entire month, right? People also are shocked when they find out that I'm 41 years old. They ask me, "How old am I?" I'm 41. Born in 1980. Like, what? How are you 41? You look a lot younger. It's like, well, thank you. But I think a lot of it has to do with happiness. Like when you love the thing that you're actually doing, when you're excited, when you have energy, it exudes through you and has the impact on other people as well. I've been asked on a bunch of health shows, what's your number one secret for good health? And people expect to hear diet or exercise or sleep. I think the number one secret for good health is being happy, is loving the work that you're doing, is feeling like you're doing something important. And so maybe that's backed up by the science by now, but it feels intuitively right to me. And let me share with you a couple ways of how to do it. Okay, well, that's great, Evan. Be happy. Well, how do we actually do it? So let me share some things that have worked in my life that I hope can have an impact in yours as well. So number one is try to run a no crisis life, a no crisis business and a no crisis life. One of the things that I stressed out over a lot when I first started my company was always being at the beck and call of other people. I used to pride myself on responding to emails really quickly. I used to use Outlook back in the day, and anytime an email came in, there was a little alert that came off. Alert, new email, like, oh. And so I had to stop what I was doing and then go respond to this email. And that cycle would reinforce itself because anytime somebody then responded, they say, "Wow, you're so fast on answering email." And that would make me want to answer it even faster the next time. What I ended up finding out though was I kept dealing with other people's emergencies, other people's requests for my time, other people's agenda for what they wanted me to do. And I dealt with all those things. And I never got the stuff I wanted to do. It never got done because I kept being distracted to go answer these emails or respond to that message. And so I had to make a conscious choice to say, I want to run a no crisis business. And if a client needs me for something that is urgent, I don't want that kind of client. If we need to respond to customer service, which I believe is really important, I'm going to hire people to help me do that. But I don't want to be in the business where I have to be on call, urgent responding to people because it stresses me out. And I don't want to be in that business. So how can you design a no crisis business? Same thing for your life. You know, for me, I love living in this condo. A lot of the stuff is taken care of. You know, we don't have roof issues or having to mow the lawn or things that break down and having to call somebody and because the air conditioner is broken or the toilet doesn't work or, all the stuff. I built a 5,000 square foot custom home and sold it to move into the condo because it's a much lower crisis life. And when you don't have a lot of crisis in your life and in your business, holy cow, you can be a lot happier. And that positivity allows you to be more creative, to be more productive, to care more about others, to give more into others. When you're stressed out, not only is it bad for your health, you're not showing up for other people, right? You're not being caring for other people. You're not thinking of other people. You're not invested into your customers or your relationships or your team because you're still too stressed out dealing with your own issues. But when you can relieve some of those things, it allows you to pour into other people. Just a quick example from my life. The past 3 weeks have been actually pretty stressful. We have been looking at different real estate options. We have been looking at different financial options. I'm diving deep into buy, borrow, die. If you look at that up as a financial strategy. I've been learning about crypto. I've been learning about NFTs. I've been learning about infinite banking. Pause.
Good afternoon. This is your building superintendent. Thank you for your patience. We've concluded the monthly generator test. All elevators in both towers are fully operational. Enjoy the rest of your day.
So that's a great example, right? Like, sure, that's a minor interruption to me filming videos for you guys, but a lot of stuff is just taken care of. So the past 2 weeks have been more stressful and have led to things bleeding into my calendar. I've let them happen. I didn't put enough guardrails around my calendar. Things have bled into my calendar, and I'm doing things on days that I normally aren't doing things. And it's led to me feeling more anxiety and stress. And so over the weekend, this past weekend, I decided, you know what? I'm doing things on the day that I said I was going to do things on, and that's it. And it means saying no to people. And as a result, I'm feeling this on a Tuesday. Since then, it was Sunday. It's like, oh man, life feels good again. Life feels really good again. Why am I so happy again? There's so much more energy again because I feel like I'm back in control. And so setting up a no crisis business, no crisis life can free up just so much energy for you and will make you a lot happier. Step number 2 to make that happen is be in control of your calendar. You have goals, you have ambitions of what a dream life looks like for you, right? Perfect. Your actions need to map to your ambitions. So what's in your calendar should reflect your goals. You say you want to be here, you say you want this kind of marriage, this kind of body, this kind of business, this kind of financial success, whatever your goals are, great. Until they're habits, until you're doing the work, nothing's going to happen. You're never going to achieve that thing without it being a habit that you're doing consistently. So where are your habits tracked? In your calendar. Show me your calendar and you'll be able to see your outcomes. So you have to be protective over your calendar. And the stress that I had over the past couple weeks was because I let things run over my calendar too much and I had to take back control. When somebody wanted to meet with me because I became obsessed about something, one of the things I fight with is I get obsessed over things. And so I became obsessed with understanding NFTs and Discord and buy, borrow, die, and all sorts of these concepts. And so I want to meet with somebody and I want to learn it. And so, yes, okay, yeah, I could squeeze that in there. Oh, I could squeeze this in here. And then I wasn't getting the other stuff done that I was supposed to do on those days. So I let the stress. So same thing for you. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? You have enough time. When people say, I don't have enough time, audit your schedule. Like if you were going to sit next to you and watch what you're doing all day, is every hour that you're spending really productive? Is every hour you're spending really intentional? Probably not, right? So before you decide to do something like give up on sleep, people ask me, well, how much do you sleep? I sleep as long as I need to sleep. I don't set an alarm in the morning, and I sleep as long as my body tells me to sleep. You know, I think before worrying about giving up sleep, you don't have to only sleep 5 hours a night. You know, I'll sleep 7.5 to 8.5 hours a night. Right? Some days more, some days less, but that's my typical range. That's what my body needs, depending on how busy a day I had the night before. Before you worry about giving up an hour of sleep, audit how you're doing with the time that you're awake. You know, if you're going to sleep 8 hours, perfect. You're awake for 16 hours. Are 16 of your hours with intention, with efficiency, with clarity of how you're going to spend that time? Probably not, right? So before you worry about now, you're not being productive or intentional with your 16 hours, what makes you think that now you're going to be productive and intentional with 20 hours? Yeah, and now you've slept 4 less hours, right? So focus instead on the hours that you are awake and put it in your calendar. Your goals have to map to the actions that you've got, right? You say you want this, show it to me in your calendar, and then put guardrails up around those things. It really, really, really matters. When you can do that, it takes a few hard no's, because people will want you to do things, and they'll want you to do things on their timelines. And that may mean you have to say no. You will have to say no. You'll have to say no to family. You have to say no to customers. You have to say no to team. But when you can set up the right time to make things happen, it makes things so much happier and easier for everybody. So as an example, I film my videos on a Tuesday. Today's a Tuesday. I don't know when the video is going to be released, but I film it on a Tuesday. So I can stay in the zone of just creating. All I have to worry about today is making lots of YouTube videos. Yesterday was Monday, and I'm only focused on my team. And so my team knows that, hey, if they're messaging me on a Tuesday, it better be urgent. Like, it better be crazy urgent. And I run a no crisis business, so it better be something insane. Otherwise, don't message me on a Tuesday, right? Because it's going to interrupt my flow. It means I have to stop doing this video to see what message you sent. And so that better be really, 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 really important. And that very rarely comes up. It's not that it's actually no crisis. We'll have something every now and then that comes up. But they know that it better be just insanely important. So it very rarely happens. So I'm not there for my team on a Tuesday, right? I'm not there for my team on a filming day like this. But I'm all in on Mondays. I'm all in helping my team on Mondays. And so what I do is I ask them, hey, if you need me within 24 hours, email me. If you need me within a week, then let's discuss it on our Monday call. If I'm going to meet you on Monday, let's discuss it on Monday. Save up the things that are important and save it for Monday for our call. And I will be there, not distracted, not checking my phone, not thinking YouTube, not thinking about anything else except you on Monday. And what that does is allow you to really over-deliver on the thing that you're doing, as opposed to being scatterbrained all over the place. So chunking your time and then setting up the guardrails around that so that people don't step all over it is really, really, really important. And when you can feel like there's always a spot in your calendar to get that thing done, it reduces stress dramatically. So if I'm worried about my YouTube channel, like, oh my gosh, you got to make videos. When are we going to make videos? When you don't have it in your calendar and when you don't feel like you have enough time, how much of your stress comes from you feeling like you don't have enough time to do something? Right? Raise your hand. Is that you? Right? How much of your stress comes from you feeling like you do not have enough time? If you had a spot on your calendar where you knew you would have the time to do it, it reduces a lot of the stress. So for me, Tuesday is going to be YouTube day. If I get an idea for making videos, if I'm thinking about making content, I know, I've got Tuesday to do it. I'll send myself an email, and on Tuesday, I'll get to it. Wednesday's my project day. So when I have ideas for what I want to do in my business to grow it, other projects to work on, if I'm working on my funnels or my landing page or my book or whatever I'm working on, I have a spot on my calendar for it. So I don't stress out. It's like, I don't have enough time to do things. Yes, I do. I've designed my life around it. I'm just going to hit it on Wednesday. I'm not going to allow distractions to carry me off course, right? It's being willing to let go of the little balls to go for the big ones. You have to pick. You're either constantly taking these little balls and getting these little wins, answering super promptly on email, responding to everybody right away, taking out these little small bites all the time, but then never having time to work on the big project. Or you chunk off time to work on your big projects in life and your business, and that means some of these little balls are going to drop, and that's okay. And you can't judge yourself for losing some of those, because what you're going to make here is magic. okay? Chunking your time, setting up the rails becomes super important. And then the last thing I say is you have to love the actual process. You want to be happy? Love your work. How much time do you spend working? A lot, right? Especially if you're an entrepreneur, you spend a lot of time working. Love your work. The number one rule for success from the people that I profiled, from entrepreneurs to athletes to musicians, like you love the actual thing that you're doing. Where a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up is you love the end result. You love the impact that it can make. You love the idea of buying a house or riding the jet plane or whatever, the outcome, but you don't love the path to get there. And if you're just, I'll do whatever it takes, you won't. You won't do whatever it takes to get to the outcome, and you'll be stressed out to the max along the way. So rather than doing that, flip it to say, I need to love the work that I'm doing and have it provide economic value to other people so I can get paid to do it. That's a secret. That the outcome is fantastic. It's great. Awesome. Hey, I got 1 million subscribers. Where's the thing? I got 1 million subscribers back there. Great. That's the outcome. I love helping. Like I love making these videos. I love feeling like this video will matter and mean something. If you're only chasing the number, you're never going to get there and you're going to hate your life in the process. Good health, I firmly believe, comes down to happiness. Yes, diet, exercise, all of that. But if you are stressed out, if you hate your life, if you despise who you're hanging out with, it's just really hard to be healthy. Where if you can now with intention design a life where happiness is a priority. How many times have you designed your calendar and your life around you being happy? What a concept. If you can make that happen, I guarantee you're going to be healthier. You're going to feel like you're contributing a lot more. You're going to have a lot more energy. You're going to be a better person for the people around you, and you're going to build a much better business in the process as well. Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
To see my one-on-one interview with Stephen Gundry, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
What is one thing that you believe about energy that most people don't?
There's no human need for fruit. Just ask an Eskimo. If you want more energy for your workout in the morning, the last